There are four national deadlines for post-quantum cryptography, and they don't agree with each other. The United States set 2035. The European Union wants high-risk systems migrated by 2030. Australia expects the organizations under its rules completely off today's public key cryptography by 2030. The UK wants discovery finished by 2028. The one that gets quoted most is 2035, and it's by far the weakest of the four. So here's the honest answer, and it isn't the one you're probably going to get from a vendor. If you're not a government agency, defense supplier, or critical infrastructure, then no, nobody has made post-quantum cryptography absolutely mandatory for you. That said, it's going to bind you anyway, because you already agreed to it in writing years ago, and I'm going to show you where. By the end of this video, you'll know whether any of this actually applies to you, where in your own paperwork you already signed up for it, and how to find the date it lands, wherever in the world you operate. I'm Addie Lamar, founder and principal advisor of Lamar Labs, with 15 years inside the cryptography the entire digital world trusts. This channel puts you in command of the quantum transition, so you lead it while the rest of your industry is still guessing. 2035 is the number in every headline and vendor deck, and it's the weakest one in the field. It comes from a White House memo signed in May 2022, and the actual wording is mitigating as much of the quantum risk as is feasible by 2035. As is feasible. That's aspirational. And the same memo calls the migration a multi-year process and reserves the right to issue further direction later. The UK's national roadmap ends on that same year, which is how an American policy goal became the number quoted in London and Sydney and Frankfurt by people who have never read the sentence it came from. So if the most quoted date in this field is a goal rather than a deadline, what are the real ones? The real deadlines disagree with each other on almost everything except a single year. The Americans want the key establishment done by 2030. The Australians want you off traditional public key cryptography entirely by 2030. The Europeans want high-risk systems migrated by 2030. Three separate regimes arrived at independently, landing on the same year, and it's 5 years earlier than the one in the headlines. Here's how each of them gets there. In the United States, Executive Order 14412, which was signed in June 2026, gives federal civilian systems until the end of 2030 for key establishment, which is the part quantum breaks first, and until the end of 2031 for digital signatures. Above that sits NSA's CNSA 2.0, which expects certain national security systems using post-quantum algorithms exclusively, not merely supporting them, by 2030. Australia runs the most aggressive schedule of the four. The Australian Signals Directorate expects a transition plan by the end of 2026, work starting on the most critical systems by the end of 2028, and the organization's bound by its information security manual completely off traditional public key cryptography by the end of 2030, not running post-quantum alongside it, off it completely. That reaches Australian government, defense, and the very large supplier base that handles protected level data for them. The United Kingdom sets a third schedule. The NCSC expects discovery finished and a migration plan built by 2028. The highest priority migrations completed by 2031 and everything done by 2035. That guidance is advisory rather than statutory, so nobody is going to fine you for missing it. And yet, UK critical infrastructure, finance, and telecom map their roadmaps to these years, which means your customers and your regulator are both measuring you against them anyway. The EU's post-quantum timeline was agreed by the member states with the Commission and published in 2025. Start by the end of 2026. Get high-risk systems, meaning critical infrastructure and the sectors a country can't function without, onto post-quantum cryptography by the end of 2030, and finish broadly by 2035. It's a recommendation to member states rather than a law, and I'll come back to what makes it bite. Germany's BSI sits underneath it all, depreciating algorithms ahead of NIST, which makes the early warning for where European expectations go next. So which one is yours? Most organizations watching this aren't American federal agencies, Australian defense, or UK critical infrastructure. But one mechanism still reaches you, and it works the same way in almost every jurisdiction. It runs like this. An algorithm's status changes on a list you don't control. An obligation you already signed points at that list. The obligation changes under you, and nobody has to write you a new rule. Here's the American version. NIST publishes transition guidance for the algorithms themselves in a draft document called IR 8547, and it depreciates RSA 2048 and the elliptic curve equivalents at the same security level after 2030, then disallows them entirely after 2035. Those dates come from an initial public draft and can still shift, so watch for the final publication. Disallowed means the algorithm comes off of the approved list. The approved list is what FIPS validation is measured against, and FIPS validation is what your contracts already require. So if any framework, regulator, customer contract, or certification you're bound to contains the words FIPS-validated or NIST-approved cryptography, the day that algorithm comes off the list is the day you fall out of compliance with something that you signed years ago. Here's the European version. And it catches the people most certain they have absolutely no European exposure. The Cyber Resilience Act is a regulation rather than guidance, and it reaches any manufacturer anywhere in the world that places a product with digital elements on the EU market. Its full obligations apply from December 11th, 2027. And here's where I want to be really precise, because this gets misquoted constantly. The Cyber Resilience Act never mentions post-quantum cryptography, but what it does require is that you protect confidentiality using state-of-the-art mechanisms, and that you ship security updates across the product's entire support period. Those are outcomes rather than algorithms. State-of-the-art isn't a fixed list either, and it moves through harmonized standards, which grant you a presumption of conformity once they're cited in the EU's official journal. As those standards converge on post-quantum baselines, the working meaning of state-of-the-art confidentiality shifts underneath your product, and nobody reopens the regulation to do it. It's the same mechanism on a different list, but on this one, the penalties reach 15 million euro or 2.5% of worldwide annual turnover, whichever is larger. So there's no jurisdiction where you get to sit this one out. So what's your date? There are 3 questions that will get you your real deadline. The first is what you've already promised. Send your contracts and compliance teams one request in these words. Pull every agreement, framework, and certification we're bound to that specifies FIPS-validated, NIST-approved, or nationally approved cryptography and list them. Payment standards, cloud certifications, government-adjacent work, and large enterprise customer contracts are where these hide. Every hit on that list inherits the withdraw date of whatever approved list it points at, and that becomes a deadline you already agreed to. The second is where you operate and where you sell. List every jurisdiction your business touches, and not merely the one you're incorporated in. Australian government or defense work puts you on the 2030 clock. UK critical infrastructure or serving it means you're measured against 2028 for discovery. Placing any product with digital elements on the EU market means the Cyber Resilience Act applies to you from December 2027, regardless of wherever your headquarters happens to be. Take that question to your general counsel because it's a legal exposure question. The third is what your largest customers will require of you at renewal. Enterprise contract language flows downhill, and for a lot of companies, the deadline arrives as a customer clause long before any regulator ever shows up. That also makes it a sales problem, which is how you get the commercial side of the house to care. Take the earliest date those 3 produce, and that is your deadline. There are 3 assumptions most leaders make. The first is treating the compliance clock and the threat clock as the same clock. They measure different things. The mandates tell you when you're required to have fixed it, and the exposure math tells you when an adversary can read what you're protecting today. Every one of these deadlines was set against timeline estimates that keep moving, so you can be fully compliant and fully exposed on the same day. The second is assuming your headquarters sets your deadline. The strictest jurisdiction you touch is the one that actually sets it. So a company incorporated in Delaware with a subsidiary selling into the EU and a support contract with an Australian department is running 3 clocks and inherits the earliest of them. The third is planning to the deadline instead of backward from it. These are dates by which the work has to be finished, and a cryptographic migration takes years. A 2030 date with a 5-year migration behind it is a 2025 start, and that date has already passed. No regulator is going to send you a letter. The obligation is already in your own filing cabinet in a contract that points at a list somebody else controls, and it comes due on the earliest date across every jurisdiction you touch. You can go find your own date this week from your own contract language and your own map of jurisdictions without waiting for anyone to hand it to you. And if you decide that reading your whole regulatory surface across every country you operate in is bigger than what your team has room for right now, that's the work I do at Lamar Labs, and the link's below. Then comes the harder question, and it's the one that stops most programs before they even start. You have a date, and now you need to know what you have to change by then. Almost no organization can actually answer that, and the document they'd reach for to try can't produce the answer. That's what we'll cover in the next video, and I'll see you there.